Hey friends, you're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry.
And I'm Irene.
Today we're going to give you a rundown on how this first heat mat, all these heat mats that we got from China are, for all practical purposes, no-name brands. This one is no-name brand number 1.
Right. Henry will go back and find out which one it was he actually posted last time. But when we went to look on the equipment today to try and find a name, there was literally no name. It says heat mat thermostat. But aside from that, it's worked great. It's
worked very well. This is 2 weeks in to the test for this particular heat mat.
Right.
Irene's going to be starting some other seedlings here in the next couple of days, and we'll take another one of the heat mats and we'll do the same repeat.
Right. It's been extremely consistent in terms of the temperature that keeps it, and this is a kind of a volatile location here. You know, we do have thermal drapes on, but this still, it gets a lot of heat during the day, and it gets quite chilly at night.
When the sun comes in, everything warms up.
Right. But we've experimented with it a bit. When I do use it with a dome on it, I've been having trouble with Issa wanting to sit on it. She's stepped on it a couple of times, things like that. So in order to keep my plants from turning into flat things, I've been using one of the tall domes like this, which has the vents on both ends and on the top. And I can leave this on all day like this, and it's fine. It gets warm in there, but it's not getting roasted because the thermostat turns down. And it does a great job of monitoring how much heat it's putting in. So it's just a matter of, like, if I know it's a super warm day, sometimes I'm here, I'll pop it off. But like the other day when we needed to go into town, I left it on the whole time because I didn't want her to sit on it. So back when we used to have grow lights in the house, she was a solar powered cat. She would lay under the grow lights and you just couldn't keep her out of there no matter what you did, so you just had to make a spot for her.
Now we have found one problem with this heat mat in use. When Irene moved the seed tray one day, the temperature probe slid out from underneath the tray.
Right, so it was trying to heat the air effectively, and that's just something you need to be aware of if your setup has a heat probe that's separate. The other thing I didn't care for about it is I tried to actually stick it to the domes, and it's got one of those little suction cups. It just doesn't. I mean, it lasted like 0.2 seconds before it fell off. I managed to get the dome in place, and then I watched it sit there and go plop. So that doesn't work. But the probe itself does a great job. You just need to be aware of where it is. Most people probably don't move their stuff around. We do because of sun and cats and other things like that. So it makes it a little bit more complicated for us. These guys are getting ready to go out into the greenhouse pretty soon. For each type of plant, I started 4 seeds, and only 2 of the seeds have not come up. One Emerald Crown, which is a broccoli, and one Laurentian, which is a rutabaga. So I'm really happy, and they still may come up, but as far as I'm concerned, that's kind of like the final score at this point. But I've got 4 of most things and 3 of a couple of other things, so I'm happy. It's a good start.
It's a really good thing we had these heat mats this year, because 2 weeks ago it was really cold outside, and as a consequence, since we're passive solar, when we have cold temperatures and no sun, it gets chilly in the house. So it was probably around 60 or 62 degrees.
Yeah, and probably about 55 over here by the window, which is no problem for us. We throw on a sweater, but you can't put a sweater on your seedlings, so it makes it kind of tough. But we've been really pleased with it. So I think I'm going to probably ship this one out to the greenhouse on the grow bench out there, because I know from experience if I put the dome on it and leave it there on the grow bench, I will monitor it for a couple of days to make sure I'm not having any issues. But usually it works just fine to leave it out there. And as long as in the morning when I go out to open things up, I open up the vents, it'll be fine.
Yeah, and our nighttime temperatures are coming back up. We had some really, really cold temperatures of the past few weeks. It's now looking like it's coming back up, so it's probably going to be in the mid to upper 20s at night most days. Between the greenhouse itself and then heat mat and the cover on it, we'll be able to keep these seedlings will stay alive just fine.
And they're all brassicas, so they're pretty tough anyway. So they can be pretty tolerant. I mean, we started radishes from scratch in the greenhouse. I didn't transplant those. And they've managed to survive. They were stalled in terms of growth, but I think as much as anything else, it was daylight. So we're probably going to modify next year. We either won't start any, or we'll run a grow lamp to lengthen the daylight. And we'll probably just skip it for a month or two there. You only have, depending on how things go in the fall. See, we were supposed to have a mild winter. That was the forecast for all of the Southwest. We were going to have this at least 10 degrees warmer than usual winter this year, which would have meant that things would have really just been gangbusters. Just no problem whatsoever. And I had actually planned to stick things out in the garden and the whole 9 yards. Well, instead it just went 10 degrees below normal and stayed there for since October most of the time.
The nice thing about starting brassicas is that they're relatively tough plant. Mm-hmm. They can take some cold. They'll be just fine out in the greenhouse now. I'm pretty happy with the results we're getting out of this heat mat. What do you think, Art?
Yeah, no, I'm very happy with how consistent it is. And I like the fact that it is really adjusting. It's not just sort of randomly going, and I'm now going to make it 20 degrees warmer. No, it's actually got a temperature that's set on the controller, and it will keep it at that temperature.
Yeah, it stays within 0.1 or 0.2 degrees.
Most of the time. When we get real shifts in temperature in the house, it might be as much as 2 degrees difference. But 2 degrees is, I mean, we're keeping it, we were not making it super hot anyway. I was only keeping it at about 72 degrees. Which is comfortable but not super hot. And I mean, there are plants that much prefer warmer, but I figured that this worked well. The brassicas are happy with it. They've come up well. I just gave it a little bit of water, and I don't know if I ever shared this with people. This is just an El Cheapo spray thing from Harbor Freight. Ta-da! And Harbor Freight gives me nothing, but
they don't give me anything either.
Occasionally a bill, that's about it. But I use this for starting my seedlings, and I started doing it last year. And I love it because you get a tiny bit of overspray, but not a tremendous amount. I can sit there and squirt right at the base of the plants, and all I do is do it until the water stands on the surface, just a teeny bit. And whether I'm starting with a bone dry thing or with something that's been watered recently, I'm not going to drown the plants. I'm not leaving a huge amount of moisture anywhere to cause problems, but it does a great job, and it's so gentle that it will not disturb even the tiny little seeds. And since I started this last year, I've been extremely pleased with my rate of germination. And I'm using good seeds to start with, but it just seems like everything took off better than it has in the past. So I'm loving this technique. And this particular one is reserved only for clean water and water-soluble fertilizer. That's it. We have other ones that are actually written on with magic marker that are used for other stuff.
Neem oil or whatever.
Right, or the organic stuff that we use for controlling.
Now, there's one thing about this heat mat is you're not supposed to immerse it in water, meaning you're not supposed to go throw it in the sink.
Right.
But it does fine with this amount of surface water that might come through. Irene has a tray underneath the seed tray.
Right, yeah, I've got these are where the seedlings are, and there's actually a separate tray here that is waterproof, and then the heat mat goes underneath, and I just have the temperature probe just stuffed underneath it. Now, because I have some empty sections here right now, I'm being careful to make sure that the probe stays under the section with the soil, because otherwise it would effectively be trying to heat the air in the empty ones, and that would probably throw it off. But very pleased with how consistent it is. No tech in terms of, I mean, it was preset. I asked, it's in Celsius, so I asked Siri what that was in Celsius, and Siri told me it was like 72 degrees, and I'm like, okay, that's perfect, we'll leave it there. And I really haven't played with it. It didn't come with any instructions, but it just did its thing, and we've been very pleased with how consistent it has been. So for cheap, it's done great.
I think this was less than $20.
So we're going to start up another one, and I'll ship this one out to the greenhouse probably tomorrow morning. Start up another batch of seeds. Then when these get a little bit bigger, they're starting to develop true leaves now.
They're time to go out in the greenhouse.
So it's time for them to go out in the greenhouse, and then they'll get after they've accommodated out there, they'll get their first shot of fertilizer, and we'll hopefully pot them up in a couple of weeks.
Well, I hope you found this to be informative for you. It certainly has been interesting for me to watch what's going on with this. Irene is responsible for all the watering for everything, because one person doing the watering and the size of our operation keeps anything from being overwatered or underwatered.
Right.
Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications so that you find out when we do something new.
Right, yeah, I need to make some yogurt cheese. I need to do a couple of things, so.
We had a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
But this was my birthday weekend, so.
We took off a little bit of time yesterday. It was fun. We needed to run a couple of errands, but we went some places we wouldn't usually go, and it was almost kind of like shopping. It was kind of cool.
Thanks very much. We'll talk with you later.
Bye.
Bye.